What's happening, everyone? In this video, we're going to cover some basic principles that you need to keep in mind when you're doing your mockups. And it is some basic tips and mindsets when it comes to trying to create realistic mockups that actually emulate an instrumentalist and don't sound like you just playing a patch in a library. So let's just listen to this example I got right here. Short and sweet and quite fun and powerful. Now, what I've done here is that I've used a mix of different articulations to try emulate the sound of a real instrument better. So if you listen to the horn patch here, I'm not just using the legato. Because that's not very realistic. A real horn player would likely do a mix of and so on, like a mix of the long and the short. And that's the first kind of principle I want you to keep in mind when you're going to make a mock-up that sounds like a real orchestra. Because again, I've said this in the string and brass tips videos and stuff as well, but a real instrumentalist don't have patches, key switches, or articulations. They have an instrument, and they can play that instrument in such a myriad of different ways, and they can change the way they play it any given second, or play different articulations within the same second for that matter. The thing is, if you have the mindset of using patches and presets, it's going to, kind of affect the way you think about it. But if you realize that these are just snapshots into the ways a real instrumentalist is playing his instrument, then that's going to become tools for you to emulate that. So, number one is to really, use different articulations to try emulate the real way of playing an instrument. And of course, if you don't really know how an instrument actually sounds or how it is played, that is a good way to start. That's why I've included a lot of those instrumental kind of principles and brass characteristics and stuff in the beginning of the orchestration chapter, giving you a breakdown of the whole families, how the instruments work. And the next step for you to get a bigger understanding of it is just to do two things: listen to more orchestral music and attend live concerts or watch live concerts of people playing. Just exposing yourself to what it sounds like and how it works is going to, give you a way deeper understanding of how the instruments work and how they sound and how they're being played. When you get that understanding, it's going to be way easier to actually emulate it, because if you don't know what it actually sounds like, how are you going to make it sound like it? So one of the shortcuts to kind of get to that result of what it might sound like is using a mix of articulations. So here, if I have a phrase that sounds like this, it sounds a bit sloppy. It would sound more like this if a real person were playing it. It's a bit hard to switch between them, but you get the idea. So if you listen to the horn separated here, you can hear there's a mix between short, little swells and crescendos, and the legatos. Let's listen. And in context, so I'm switching between different articulations instead of just using the legato or the staccato. And this alone is going to go a long way in making things sound more realistic. Let's listen to the trumpets. And there you go, a mix of long and short articulations. And the same goes for basically every little instrument that I have in here, so trombones and tubas as well. And so on. Same violins as well. I've been trying to use a mix of short and long articulations to emulate more of the real thing. Like say we take this and the horn, and both of them are changing between different articulations, and you can probably get an idea of what I mean. Let's listen to this. It especially becomes more obvious when it's playing in context with other instruments. That's when it really starts to sound more realistic as well, when you're mixing different articulations. Okay, so now that we've seen that basic principle, let's just look at some ways that we can like make this happen. So say you have a little melody phrase. Those fast notes don't sound as good in the long articulation, so let me switch to the short ones. Like that, and that's basically how you want to record it. And there's a couple of ways to do it. And you can use key switches, which means having one patch, and you use, keys on the keyboard to switch between the articulations, which can be good for recording things on the go and doing things fast. However, there are some downsides to this, because the option is to have them as separate tracks as I do here, which is my personal preference. Just because, say you're going to give this to an orchestrator, for example, then it's going to be easier for him to have all these articulations kind of mapped out, so it knows like, okay, that's a rip, that's a trill, that's a run, instead of just having MIDI on one track with a bunch of key switches, because that's going to be fairly hard to read. Now, I know most of you in this course and the tracks you're going to make here probably are not going to be sent to an orchestrator. It's more just for future reference. It's handy to know. And another thing that I like about having them in two tracks is that certain articulations from certain libraries have different volumes and kind of energy levels on the different articulations. All in all, it's just up to you and finding the way and the workflow that works the best for you. So I encourage you to experiment with it, load up some articulations, see if you prefer to use key switches or multiple tracks. All right, let's now just go back and listen to this track once more. So you see that I most of the time have them separated completely, the short and the long. Sometimes you see that there is a little bit of an overlap, and that's when I want just to accentuate the energy of the long samples. And this is just about like what sounds the best. Like here, I just wanted these notes to be accentuated by the short one, because if I take it away, it just didn't have that energy that I wanted. And if I only have the short ones, it sounded a little bit too sharp and short. But if I combined them, it gave me that energy that I wanted for that, particular little phrase. So sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of overlap. It's more kind of like coloring with the sounds and the frequencies that you want. So let's just do a quick recap. The most important thing is to put yourself in the mind of an instrumentalist. Again, they don't relate to articulations in the same way as you do as a composer with a library. They can play any articulation in the blink of an eye. So switching between articulations and kind of trying to think what would a real instrumentalist do is going to be, make a big difference in the outcome of your track. So I'd encourage playing around with that. It doesn't have to be very intricate. I only have the long and short articulations from the horns and so on in the Nucleus library from Audio Imperia, which is what I use to sketch pretty much every day now. So it doesn't have to be like a super fancy library. It's more about the mindset and actually having the patience to do this and to flesh it out more with different tracks, with different articulations, rather than just going the easy way and using one. Now, that being said, sometimes you don't really need that super realistic sound. Say for trailers and stuff, then using just a staccato patch for strings might, yield the most powerful and punchy result that fits for that medium and that style. So I'm not saying you always need to do this, but if you're going for something that's realistic and sounds like an actual orchestra, then this is the way to go. Hope that's been helpful, everyone. I'll see you guys later.